What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video. Earlier this week, I released my 2022 fantasy quarterback rankings. Today, it's time to talk about the running backs. I'll be talking about half PPR formats, which isn't too different from what my PPR ranks would be. Let me know down in the comments who you agree with and who you disagree on. But alright, let's get right to it. Let's dive in. Coming in at number 1 on the 2022 running back ranks is Jonathan Taylor, not a big shocker. Taylor was awesome last year for fantasy, finishing as the RB1 in all formats. Over 2,000 yards and 20 total touchdowns. Although a running back hasn't been the RB1 in back-to-back years since Todd Gurley did it in 2017-2018, I expect Jonathan Taylor to push for the RB spot once again. There's no Carson Wentz, but I think Matt Ryan is an even trade-off, if not an upgrade for the Colts. Look, Taylor's so young, every running back gets hurt, sure, but Taylor proved to me that he can handle a big workload and not get injured. Look, don't overthink it, be smart, and go with JT with your first pick. Coming in at number 2 is Derrick Henry. Now, this is where the debate starts. Derrick Henry was thought to be invincible until week 8 last year, where he went down with what seemed to be a season-ending injury. But don't forget, Henry did come back for the playoff game against the Bengals. So the injury doesn't worry me long term. If he's able to come back for the playoff game, why would it? Henry before that injury was on pace for 465 carries with 38 catches. That's over 500 touches, which would have been an NFL record. Henry isn't going to do much in the receiving game. Although last year, he had 18 catches in 8 games, which is actually one off from his career high in just 8 games. I'm willing to bet on Henry getting a monster workload and pray to the fantasy gods that he stays healthy, because if he does, I expect another 1,600 to 2,000 yard season and 15 plus rushing touchdowns. Coming in at number 3 is Austin Ekeler. 2021 was a great breakout year for him. Ekeler is one of the rare players who doesn't have his value solely because of touches. For reference, last year Jonathan Taylor had 370 touches. Joe Mixon was the RB3 and finished with 330 touches. Najee Harris was RB4 and finished with 380 touches, while Ekeler finishes the RB2 and only had 276 touches. That's almost 100 less than some guys. I love this Chargers team. Justin Herbert could make another jump going from an up-and-coming star to a superstar. I think having a great QB only helps put the offense in more scoring positions. I would expect the numbers to look pretty similar from last year to this year. 900 to 1,000 rushing yards, 70 plus catches, adding another 500 yards through the air. If anything, I can see the receptions taking a bit of a step forward. But when you look at his stats, the one thing that stands out is 20 touchdowns. On such limited touches is a hard thing to replicate. So don't expect Ekeler to go out and score another 20 touchdowns. Double digits are 100% in play, but temper your expectations a bit. And let's be honest, Christian McCaffery, who we'll talk about next, wishes he got this workload. I believe the worst thing the Chargers could do next season is give Ekeler 300 plus touches. He may look jacked, but he's still a small man at heart. The limited rule is what keeps Ekeler healthy and in our fantasy lineups for 2022. And coming in at number 4 is Christian McCaffrey. This one I'll make short and sweet. Last year, when McCaffrey played a full game, he finished those weeks as the RB1, RB3, RB16, RB5, RB4. The bottom line is, when CMC plays, he can finish as the RB1. The big question is, can he stay healthy? I'd like to see the Panthers learn from the Chargers, like I mentioned before, and give him the Ekeler touch count. I don't need CMC to get 350 to 400 touches. Last year, he was on pace for 330 touches, and that includes 2 games where he left due to injury. So if he played the full game, it would have been even higher. But getting hurt 3 years in a row for a player who never missed a game in his first 3 seasons seems improbable to me. Also, I'll just quickly mention, at the time I'm recording this, Baker Mayfield is linked, which he's been all offseason, to possibly getting traded to the Panthers. Although Mayfield isn't a great quarterback, I think he's way better than Sam Darnold. Bottom line, CMC is great, but are you willing to take the risk and hope he stays healthy? Coming in at number 5 is Alvin Kamara. Kamara has been one of my favorite players over the past 3 to 4 seasons. He used to be on the Ekeler touch count, where he just finished the year with 250 to 275 touches, but 2021 was completely different. Last year, in just 13 games, he had already surpassed his previous career high in touches. With Sean Payton retiring, it's unknown what Kamara's workload will look like in 2022. Another big question is, who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Saints? We assume it'll be Jameis Winston. Taysom Hill got announced that he's just going to focus on being a tight end, but will Jameis Winston be ready for week 1? I guess the good thing is Andy Dalton is the backup quarterback there, which doesn't make me feel awesome, but at least I know they have a competent quarterback who can, make completions and get the ball downfield. All these questions are why I believe they will give Kamara a huge workload next season. I mean, wouldn't you give your awesome elite running back the ball as much as possible if you don't trust your quarterback, haven't seen your star receiver Michael Thomas play a snap of football in over a season? Kamara is awesome, whose situation is a little shaky, but when it comes to fantasy football, I bet on talent, and I'm not afraid of Alvin Kamara at number 5. Coming in at number 6 is probably the most disrespected running back this year in fantasy football. It's Nick Chubb. Chubb just wows me every year by how consistent he is. He gets hated on the rankings list where I see him. ESPN has Chubb as the RB 13 in PPR, 12 in standard leagues. That doesn't even make any sense. From 2019 to 2021, 3-year sample, Chubb averages 14 games played, just under 1,500 scrimmage yards, 9.6 touchdowns. So a guy who's going to put up these stats is supposed to be ranked as the RB12? Last year, the RB12 in fantasy was Aaron Jones, who only ran for 750 yards and 350 yards through the air. You can make the excuse saying, well, Kareem Hunt is there, or I don't like their quarterback situation. The facts are, Chubb has been dealing with this his entire career, and for 3 seasons, he's averaged crazy numbers and has been great for fantasy. People are infatuated with the unknown, but what I do know is, Nick Chubb is awesome. Coming in at number 7 is Dalvin Cook, and this one is super simple. Dalvin Cook should never be 7 on any list, but the major concern is, he's never healthy. In his career, he's never played a full 16 games. The most he's ever played is 14 games in a season. And last year was a bit of an up and down year for fantasy, and it felt like he fell off as an elite fantasy option. But when you look at the stats, he ran for over 1,100 yards in 13 games. The big issue was he only scored 6 touchdowns, which is a major fluke. In 2 seasons from 19 and 20, Cook scored 30 touchdowns. So the fact that he only ran for 6 touchdowns when he was averaging, 15 a year is unbelievable. So when you sit down to draft Cook, just remember, he's more than likely going to miss some time, and you have to ask yourself if that's something you can live with. But if you are, and he ends up playing the full season, he has a chance to be the RB1. Coming in at number 8 is DeAndre Swift. This offseason, I thought I was going to be crazy going out on a limb and saying I love DeAndre Swift. Turns out I'm not so crazy, he's getting a ton of love. I even dedicated an entire video to DeAndre Swift. If you want to check that out, you can see it above. Swift is one of those players that's hard to rank because he hasn't put together a really great season yet. Last year, he totaled 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns in 13 games, which is good, but not great. Look, I don't care about the situation in Detroit. I know they're not very good. I'm just going out and believing in 2 things. 1, the player's talent. I think Swift is awesome. He does everything. He catches the ball, he's strong, he's fast, he's super quick. 2, I think he's going to catch a ton of passes. I mean, he caught 62 passes in 13 games. Swift never has to come off the field. Even if the Lions are down 30, he's still going to catch dump-off passes all season long from Jared Goff and be a reliable part of this offense. I'm all in on Swift this year. Coming in at number 9 is Joe Mixon. This is a rank I know not many people agree with, but I love Joe Mixon. I'll admit I'm a big fan of his game. I think he's a great running back, but I'm taking a step back with the Bengals this year and expecting them to come back down to earth a little bit. The Bengals were last year's Cinderella team, and most of the time, these teams don't repeat offensive success. The 2017 Falcons, following the Super Bowl loss to the Patriots, went from 1st in offensive points to 15th the next year. Then that year, 2017, the Eagles won the Super Bowl while being 3rd in points, 7 in yards. The next year, that dropped to 13th in points and 12th in yards. Mixon finally put it all together. After years and years of battling injury or having a nice front half and a bad back half or vice versa, he finally put it all together. But the reason I had Mixon lower than most, he's been up and down player his whole career. Last year, Mixon either got you 90 plus yards rushing in a game or he got you less than 70. There was no in between. So if Mixon can keep up his high TD numbers from last year, then he should be great again for fantasy. But if this offense comes back down to earth like I expect it to, Mixon could be a bit of a hot and cold player in 2022. Coming in at number 10 is Najee Harris. Now this is the last player who I feel has the combo of safety and high upside. Harris was very inefficient last year, only averaging 3.9 yards per carry. I think Harris is a good player, but watching his film, I wasn't as wowed as I thought I'd be. Does the efficiency really matter when he's going to get 350 to 400 touches? Big Ben's gone, and I actually think Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett will be upgrades over Big Ben. Teams know Ben couldn't throw downfield, and they load the box against Harris. While I don't expect Harris to catch 74 passes again, I can see him in the 40 to 50 range. But I believe with the QB change and the upgraded O-line, Najee's efficiency could rise, which could be a huge win for his fantasy production, even if the receptions go down. At the end of the day, we know what Pittsburgh's like. They use one bell cow running back who's going to get a ton of carries, a ton of touches. We know Najee has a pretty safe floor, but if he becomes more efficient, he could skyrocket in the rankings. Coming in at number 11 is Saquon Barkley. Why can't I give you up? After burning me last year, I went back and I looked at Saquon Barkley on film, and I'm still impressed. I still think he's awesome. The kid showed lightning quick strength, all the things he showed before his torn ACL, and coming back another year removed from his ACL, this will be a big bounce back season for him. But I need to be realistic. I really hate Daniel Jones, and I don't trust that offensive line at all. Saquon was getting hit with unblocked defenders and having to avoid them in the backfield all season long. I really want to see something in that offensive line to improve, to make me move Barkley up in my rankings. There's a lot of question marks here. Will Daniel Jones improve, or is he going to be gone after the season? Can Saquon Barkley stay healthy? If you think the risk is too high, I understand. But I know Saquon Barkley is still elite, and I truly believe that truly elite players can rise above their situations. He did it before with Eli Manning. Why can't he do it again with Daniel Jones or maybe Tyrod Taylor? The ceiling is super high with a player this talented, but his situation makes his floor really low. Coming in at number 12 is James Conner. I'm super excited about Conner this year. He resigned in Arizona on a pretty solid deal, and to make it even better, Chase Edmonds is now gone. The only known backups are Darrell Williams and Eno Benjamin, so it looks like Conner has the job to himself. With Conner, he's a good player, not great, so I think his upside is going to be capped. But with his upside being capped, I think his floor is incredibly high and safe. He has 3 things going for him. 1, he has the job to himself. 2, in the 6 games where he started when Chase Edmonds went out to injury, Conner averaged 14.5 carries and 4.5 receptions. So that's nearly 20 touches a game while scoring 5 touchdowns in 6 games. So getting a running back in what we think is a good, if not great offense, who has the job to himself, can catch passes, and is known for being a touchdown maker his whole career. That sounds pretty solid to me. Coming in at number 13 is Aaron Jones. This is one of the hardest players I've had to rank all year. Talk about really a lack of upside. Last year, AJ Dillon outcarried Jones, and they actually ended up finishing within 5 touches of each other. I want to believe in Aaron Jones because I think he's a really good running back. And if you're in an offense with a back-to-back MVP, I really want you on my fantasy team. The lack of receiving weapons in Green Bay gives me hope that Jones could be in line for more targets. He's been very consistent with 45+ receptions in the past 3 years. I think that will shoot up to the 55 to 70 range. Green Bay is really going to need him in the receiving game. I worry that the upside isn't going to be there, especially if there's another running back on the roster who's basically splitting the touches 50-50. I do believe in a solid floor. In this offense, you need 10 to 15 touches, throw in some catches, a goal and opportunity here and there, and you have a solid low-end RB1, high-end RB2. Coming in at number 14 is Javonte Williams. Talk about a star in the making. And I'm going to make this one quick. Although Melvin Gordon is back in town, I think Denver still keeps a slight committee. 2021 was a dead even 50-50 split. I think the Broncos would do themselves a disservice if they didn't give Williams the bigger piece of the touch pie chart. This offense takes a huge jump with Russell Wilson under center. Going from Teddy B and Drew Lock, this is a huge turnaround. Chris Carson in Seattle had 2 seasons of 1,300 and 1,400 yards and 9 rushing touchdowns. Although Chris Carson is a solid player, Javonte Williams blows his talent out of the water. I think Javonte Williams has good upside and a pretty safe floor in this offense. Sadly, this is a guy you're going to have to pay up for. My only worry is, what if Melvin Gordon is still heavily involved and they split the touches 50-50 like they did last year? I don't think they'll do that. I think they'll make Javonte Williams the one, and he'll be a star. Coming in at number 15 is J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins was a favorite of mine from last offseason. Sadly, he tore his ACL and missed the year, but there is a great sign that he'll be back and healthy and ready for week 1. Gus Edwards tore his ACL, and the Ravens didn't draft any running backs. They only signed Mike Davis, and Justice Hill remains on the roster. So they didn't bring in any substantial running back help just in case he or Edwards aren't ready for the season. And before the injury, I thought Dobbins was going to be an absolute star, a crazy breakout story that was getting slept on. Baltimore's offense is one of the most run-heavy offenses in the league, so if Dobbins is healthy, he'll be the starting in the lead on this team that could lead the league in rushing attempts. Hopefully we get the news that Dobbins is healthy and ready for training camp and preseason work, because I think Dobbins will be going late enough in drafts that he's going to be an absolute steal. A running back with a very safe floor and high upside. I love J.K. Dobbins this year. Number 16 is Leonard Fournette, and I gotta be honest, I'm not buying into this whole Leonard Fournette thing. He's going really early in drafts, and I'm just not buying it. I don't think he's a very good player, and when I need to trust him, he breaks my trust. Maybe I'm too hard on Fournette. Maybe I judge him for the player he was in Jacksonville. But I just think he's a big back who can move okay, and obviously he can catch some passes. It's just hard for me to trust him. But the way he works out for fantasy is if he's the main back for Brady and he either scores some big TDs or catches 70 passes again. I hate buying in on Fournette, a player who I don't even think is very talented, as a potential RB1, but the workload on a great offense alone could make him worth the pick. He was good for fantasy last year, so maybe he could do it again. Coming in at number 17 is David Montgomery. And I think David Montgomery doesn't really get the respect he deserves. I don't think he's an awesome player. I think he's a really good, solid player. James Conner, Chris Carson, some guys that I mentioned earlier, just a really big, strong back who can score on some goal line plays, can catch the ball out of the backfield, and can make some things happen. It hasn't all come together for Montgomery quite yet. 2 seasons with 1,100 yards, but had one big season with 1,500 scrimmage yards and around 40 catches, 7 to 10 touchdowns. That's pretty good numbers. But this Bears offense could be one of the worst in the NFL next year. It's really Darnell Mooney and a bunch of unknowns at receiver, and the biggest question mark of them all is Justin Fields going to improve? I like David Montgomery. He's being forgotten all about as RB16 going at pick 32 overall. In his career, he's finished as the RB25, RB4, I'm sure most people forgot about that, and last year was RB21. So which David Montgomery are we getting? And can we trust the Chicago situation to improve from last year? Coming in at number 18 is Josh Jacobs, and this really pains me to do. I was told I have a problem with getting attached to players, and although I think Josh Jacobs is a great player who's addicted to finding the end zone, he's been banged up and has been getting worse and worse since his rookie season. Not to mention the Raiders declined his 5th-year option. I don't think this matters for 2022, but could be an issue for 2023 in the future. Although Jacobs caught 50 passes last year, his carries dropped a lot, from 273 the previous year to just 217 this past season. This offense looks like it's ready to roll after trading for Davante Adams, so we can expect this offense to be in a lot of scoring opportunities, which Jacobs takes advantage of. 28 touchdowns in 3 years. Jacobs has just disappointed me time and time again. One too many times for me to trust him again. For as talented as a player he is, I'm afraid he might not just have the RB1 gene in him. Coming in at running back 19, it's Ezekiel Elliott. Look, I'll make this one quick. I just think Zeke is done. I don't think he looks like he's his vintage self at all. You can send me all the BS of him being injured, and sure, maybe that's the case. Maybe it is. But if he was so injured, it affected him this much, he should have sat out, because basically last year, he would hit a hole, try to make a juke, get tackled, and fall down. Tony Pollard has some real juice, and I think is a fun player. He probably shouldn't be, take Zeke's spot as the 1A in this offense and be the pure feature back. I don't think he's ready for that. I think Pollard is too small, but the Cowboys want to make the playoffs. If they want to be a legitimate team, they need to get Pollard more involved in this offense. Why shouldn't they do the Packers strategy of splitting touches, make Zeke your in-between the tackles runner, and let Pollard handle all the outside zone runs and receptions? Zeke has been average the past 2 seasons, and I think it's finally time we give up on him. He can have his weeks when he pieces together a few catches and a TD, but I'm done with Zeke Elliott, and I think at RB19, I think that's a proper ranking. Coming in at number 20 is AJ Dillon. AJ Dillon was a player I didn't think I'd like because I liked Aaron Jones so much as a player, but I kind of fell for AJ Dillon. I think the Packers have 2 studs in their backfield. Last year, like I mentioned earlier with Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones basically had the same amount of touches. They're like 5 off from each other. And I think to keep Aaron Jones healthy, like I just mentioned with Zeke Elliott, AJ Dillon should be the grinder, while Aaron Jones was the outside zone guy and receiving back. But Dillon can also contribute a nice sized portion of the receiving game. Dillon is a goal line behemoth who is strong as hell, physical, has great balance, and look, I know you've seen those thighs. If not, look them up. He plays with a 2-time MVP in Aaron Rodgers. Then last season, Dillon only had 19 touches in his first 3 games, but from weeks 4 and on, Dillon averaged 12 carries and 2 receptions, and that includes a game where he only played 13 snaps. I think Dillon could have an increased role this year. Aaron Rodgers is going to need all the weapons he can get, and being the goal line back in an Aaron Rodgers offense is so useful for fantasy. Maybe he won't be weekly consistent, but when he does get the touches and the goal line opportunity, he'll have some big weeks. Coming in at 21 is Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson really scares me this year. Last year, he would make some great plays, but then he would fumble or drop a pass, and he would continually kind of fight being in the doghouse, getting in it, getting put out of it. It was a constant battle. I think in Washington, this could be his last straw to earn and prove he's a starting running back in the future for the Commanders. You can see when he's on the field. He has good vision, he's great balance, and he's pretty sturdy. And he was a receiver in college, so he can definitely catch the ball. He's a pretty talented player. Gibson has been your standard RB2. Weeks of 12 for 31, 10 for 44, 8 for 34, 15 for 26. Those happen. So it's safe to say that he's a hit or miss player. And I think he's really just falls into the category of RB2 hit or miss week. Good luck. Coming in at number 22 is Elijah Mitchell. This is just a pure upside play. I tend not to trust Kyle Shanahan with running backs. He's been long tenured as being a not trustworthy player with his running backs. But last year, Elijah Mitchell was his guy. No matter how many times Mitchell got hurt or messed up, the next time he was healthy or able to get back into the game, he would just get his job back just like that. Mitchell was a fine player, but with holes the 49ers are blocking up for him, it almost doesn't matter, right? It's kind of like my Najee Harris comparison from earlier. If this guy is just going to be on a great offense and get all the touches, be the bell cow behind a great offensive line, I don't know if it really matters how good he is. This pick, it could be awesome, or it could be a complete dud. I have no idea if Elijah Mitchell is a legitimate running back in this league, but he could pan out for you. Number 23 for me is Kareem Hunt. And look, this is just me betting on talent once again. I just think Kareem Hunt is a very solid running back. You know, his weekly upside is capped because he's the 1B in that offense behind Nick Chubb, who's obviously a superstar. In games where Hunt was healthy last year, he averaged 15 touches and scored 5 touchdowns in 5 games. The weekly floor seems pretty safe, right? He's going to probably get 10 to 15 touches a week. And if Nick Chubb happens to go down to injury, you have a jackpot lottery ticket in Kareem Hunt being a locked and loaded every week RB1. But for now, he's a baseline RB2. And like with Nick Chubb, I don't care who the quarterback is. That offense has functioned for the last 2 to 3 seasons with both these guys in the backfield, and they've both been great. Rounding out my top 24 is Breece Hall. Now, this one is a pure upside play, if you want to call it that. You know, I would assume he enters the season as the RB for the Jets. Michael Carter had some great weeks last year and was used a good amount as a receiver out of the backfield. Breece Hall was a great running back at Iowa State who can be a factor in the passing game. I worry that the offense for the Jets will be bad once again. I'm really not a believer in Zach Wilson. He showed some flashes, but I kind of thought he looked terrible and didn't handle pressure at all well as a rookie. So I'm kind of out on the Jets overall as a fantasy, unit. But if he's going to get a ton of volume, he could pan out and be solid for fantasy. I don't know if Breece Hall is very good. He was good in college. Was he elite? Was he the next superstar running back? I tend to think not. I think he was a good running back coming out. So, Breece Hall at 24 scares me. But if he's going to get a lot of touches and he's going to be the main RB1, he's got to be ranked high. All right, so those were my top 24 running backs. And quickly, I just want to name some guys on the rest of my rankings, probably up until about the 36 range. So quickly, let's talk about number 25, Travis Etienne. I didn't think he was much of a prospect coming out of Clemson. He was good, but I didn't think he was going to really amount to anything in the NFL. This is just a pure upside shot. I know that James Robinson tore his Achilles, and I don't know if he's going to be back in time. I don't know if he's going to be a factor. So Travis Etienne, if he has that job, it should be valuable and worth something. 26 for me is Cordell Patterson. I mean, he's being kind of slept on. I wanted to get him in my top 24, but the 1-year wonder really spooks me. It scares me every time. But last year when Cordell played, he's valuable. I mean, he caught a ton of passes out of the backfield, was useful, was really a cornerstone piece of that offense where right now they're lacking weapons. It's Kyle Pitts and it's a rookie Drake London. So Cordell Patterson, if he comes in as the starter, he could be very valuable. 27 for me is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm not loving him, not hating him. He's fine. I just had a conversation with my buddy David, and I don't know. I don't think we're really in on him or out. They just brought back Jerick McKinnon, and I don't know. I'm kind of out. I'm just out on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, I have him at 27 because, sure, there's upside there. I mean, he's on the best offense in the league, but his downside could be really scary. 28 for me, Cam Akers. I'm not trusting it either. I never thought he was that great coming out when he had that big, surge in his fantasy value. Wasn't a big fan. Coming off the Achilles, I thought he looked really bad in the playoffs last year. I'm out on Cam Akers. 29, Miles Sanders. Still think he's a good player, but just can't score touchdowns and never seems to be consistently on the field and make any consistent, fantasy touches or anything. He's a very inconsistent player. 30, Kenneth Walker. He might be able to step into Seattle and just start right away. I think last year Rashad Penny looked really good, but the man hasn't stayed healthy at all his career. So Kenneth Walker could step right in and be the starter. And Chris Carson, I think he's going to probably retire from the NFL. I don't think he's going to get medically cleared because of his neck. 31 for me is someone I like is Ramondre Stevenson. I have him ranked above Damian Harris, and I just think Stevenson looked really good on film last year. He looked really fast for his size. He looked like a better version of Damian Harris. So in that offense that's going to run a ton with Mac Jones under center, Stevenson could break out this year. He could maybe take that spot, or he could be a 1A, 1B situation. And that's kind of it for the running backs. I mean, there's a lot of other guys that I could talk about, but no one who I think you're really considering as a starter or anyone even a fringe starter, like a play. I think these guys are more shot in the dark guys. So we'll end it right there. So let me know down below who you agreed with and who you disagreed with. I want to know. Please tell me. Later this week, I'm going to come out with my wide receiver rankings and a video, of course, to come with it. So if you enjoyed the video, like down below, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.